Hey, Raising Athletes podcast fans, Kirsten here, and I have to share my new favorite hydration secret with you. Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. If you're looking for the ultimate hydration boost, this is it. Corvive's Hydrate is an NSF certified for sport, trusted by 4 Major League Baseball teams and 3 military bases. With 6 grams of pure organic cane sugar, it ensures you absorb all the electrolytes you need. And get this, it has 3 times the electrolytes and 4 times less sugar than those leading brands. Plus, it's developed using the World Health Organization's standards for oral rehydration solutions, making it the equivalent of a bag of IV fluids. Best of all, there are no artificial dyes or sweeteners. It's so perfect for the entire family. You can drink it any time of day, before, during, or after workouts or sports. So say goodbye to sugary juices and hello to superior hydration with Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. Visit corvive.com. That's CORVIVE.com. And use promo code Kirsten. That's KIRSTEN for 30% off your order. Try it today and feel the difference.
Hi,
Once you know it's for real,
I know.
you're like,
Okay, let's start. Hi, I'm Kirsten Jones,
and I'm Susie Walton.
and this is our podcast, #Raising Athletes with Kirsten and Susie.
Our passion is supporting parents and raising not only strong athletes, but extraordinary people.
Join us each week as we tackle all topics youth sports, including everything from early specialization and overuse injuries
To helping our kids feel empowered and learn how to advocate for themselves, not only in the classroom and on the court, but at dinner tables and in their communities.
We'll be talking to coaches, athletes, parents,
And anyone else who will speak to us.
about their experiences with youth sports and their paths to success.
And even more importantly, their failures. Yes, we're going to get into the gritty details of what went wrong so that we can all learn from it. Teach our kids
And ourselves.
how to do better next time.
Because in the words of Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. So welcome to Raising Athletes, because we love to win too.
Let's do this.
Hello and welcome back to the Raising Athletes podcast. My name is Kirsten Jones. I'm a peak performance and sports parenting coach and author of Raising Empowered Athletes. I've spent the last 9 months traveling all over the United States, speaking about this book everywhere from New York and Virginia to Texas, California, and I was just in Portland, Oregon. I love getting out in the community, meeting with parents, with coaches, with athletes, and learning about what are the issues that we're coming up against as we all participate in this $37 billion business that is youth sports. There's so much good about youth sports, and that's why we all love to have our kids in playing sports. And there are some downsides that are holding us back and are limiting our kids and our potential as parents. And so that was why Susie and I started this podcast 5 years ago. And today's guest is perfect timing for what's going on in the world with all the mental health. Again, between COVID, between us staying home, with our kids being super busy, with the high anxiety that our kids have over school. Dr. Nelly and I are actually both Sunshine moms, and meaning our daughters play volleyball for Sunshine. My daughter now getting ready to be done. But we've met through that and realized we had a shared mission. And Dr. Nelly, I'm so excited to have you on. She's a licensed clinical psychologist, an author as well of Peace Parenting Essentials, and a social emotional learning specialist. So I'll let you explain further what you do if I haven't done you justice, but I'm so excited to jump in and talk about all of these issues that I know we talk on the sidelines about all the time, which is our children's health and our own.
Oh, thank you so much. What an honor. I'm so happy to be here. And I followed you for years, and I really look up to you. So thank you for continuing this journey to be a guiding light for many of us parents, as well as educators and mental health specialists who are looking for opportunities to help raise more healthy, conscious teenagers and youth.
Yeah.
So it's great. Thank you for what you do.
Oh, yay. And we were talking before we started recording. We both have three children. So you're right in the thick of it with three teenagers. And I believe we teach what we need to learn. And so when I am teaching, it's because I too am going through things. I'm not a sage from the stage, I'm a guide from the side. I am messing up, I'm falling down. And we were just discussing even volleyball, right? And I think one of the biggest gifts of sports is that it doesn't always go well. What do you see? Let's talk about you as a mom. What do you see with your own kids in, one of the things we do as parents is we have that innate need to fix, right? Like, oh, I just want to make it better for them. Oh, if I could just help them through this. What do you find, and you have all the tools also as being a doctor and understanding it from a behavioral specialist standpoint, but how do you approach when things don't go well with your kids?
Um, so a couple of things come to mind when I'm sitting with other parents. You mentioned Sunshine, which is an amazing club. We've had great experiences this past year, but we're in a huddle of parents supporting our student athletes, right? So we're watching them play, sometimes play their hearts out, like they're really all in and doing their best, and then it comes down to the wire. Those couple of points where they don't reach their goal. Say, they're playing to get a bid for the nationals, and they're just 2 points or a few points short of that goal. I think in those moments, how we manage our emotional sort of states, how we surf our emotions, as Dan Siegel would say, it's directly related to our kids and these young athletes who are trying to manage and surf their emotions in those moments. And what I've noticed is parents who are able to create space and make space for those athletes, young athletes, to figure things out on their own, to rely on each other as a team, to lean on their coaches, and just pause during those moments of loss, not necessarily failure, but loss, um, are really best moments of growth. Like I've seen the post traumatic growth, if you may, with some of these kids a lot more than I have when parents are trying to overprotect or project or bring their own emotional tsunami to those situations. And so it's really great. And I know, certain clubs really promote that type of balance and social emotional development. And I love being part of those teams and those groups of parents who we're all on the same page. We're all practicing conscious parenting. We're all really dedicating our time and efforts in creating space for these young athletes to figure things out on their own, and to deal with those emotional experiences. It's a very emotional sort of experience, learning arena, as I call it. But good for them, because the way you get stronger and gritty is by having those opportunities to figure things out, to know, how do I handle like my pain. I see players who cry sometimes after a loss like that, or are disappointed, but then they figure things out, and then you see them come back stronger with more motivation, with a drive to get it next time. And so those are the post-traumatic growth opportunities that I love celebrating with our kids, our student athletes. And I love it when we're in a community where they're like-minded folks, open-minded folks who support each other on those journeys.
So we have parents listening, we have athletes listening. So, in those moments, do you have any advice for parents? And I'm sure the kids would be like, yes. Do you have any advice for my parents? And that's what I hear a lot when I speak. You heard me speak in Kansas City, and I showed the video of the kids talking that I just want you to cheer for me. I just want you to say good job. Do you have any tips for the parents on to how to handle those moments where it is on the line, we don't win this, we don't get to the next level, where it feels like it's an everything moment?
So I can tell you what's worked for me is, which partially, I'm learning. As you mentioned, this is a journey. We're all in it together and we're learning. I think being open-minded and to really lean into the learning experience is huge. So I learned from you, from your talk, that it's really healthy to say, I love watching you play. And I've been using that and saying it in different ways and really feeling it. I didn't feel it before, it was just like something I said, but now I'm feeling it and I'm saying it in different ways that is emotionally meaningful to my daughter as well as myself and other teammates as well as other parents. And it really makes a difference when you're really like grateful about this opportunity to watch your young athletes play. It is an opportunity, it's a privilege. And so when you lean into that space and you're grateful and you experience gratitude and you convey that feeling as opposed to getting really stuck with the negative affect, the negative emotional experience of the loss, I think it makes a difference. Like the athletes pick it up, they feel it, and therefore they're not internalizing extra negative emotional baggage from the really the fans. We are their fans, their biggest
Mhm.
fans. And so we need to be mindful of that. And I think I wasn't as mindful as I could have been before listening to you. So thank you, Coach
I
Kirsten.
like to look at it as, wonderful. I'm glad it's resonating because again, same. I mean, and I think I tell parents too, it's not, my opening story in the book is a guy that true story, hired the plane to fly over his son's baseball game to say, fire Coach Smith and Coach Kowalczyk, not because they were losing, not because they had a bad team, not because we didn't like the coach, but because his son wasn't playing.
Mhm.
And what message we send our kids to them when we helicopter, drone, snowplow, you name the metaphor, dive in and take away exactly what you talked
Mhm.
about, which is that learning moment of, oh, that sucked. I didn't get a play. We lost. It didn't go the way I thought. Because now I don't have any, as the athlete, I don't have any power
Mhm.
because I'm expecting now my parent who normally just takes care of this. So I guess we're going to a different team, we're going to a different school, we're going to, we're going to find a different coach. I now learn nothing,
Mhm.
and I feel disempowered. I feel like, do I matter? And I
Right.
think we're getting to that place where it is out of zero ill will. Like there is not a parent out there that is like, let me screw up my kid. Of course not. They're doing the best they can.
Mhm.
So it's like, what I would love to put on a billboard somewhere is, like, think about what you are projecting to your child at all times while you're being the cheerleader.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking about it, then you're like, oh, like I sometimes sit there and I'm thinking, okay, what is my body language? Is it positive? Am I, and I don't have to be cheering for every single point, but I shouldn't be also, when you see these kids at these tournaments where their head is on a swivel, like
Mhm.
every single point, looking to the sidelines for validation, or they're hoping to make the parent happy. It's a big burden that we place on our kids.
Yes, it is. And also, I think the parents, as super fans or fans of the athletes, are responsible to create a culture in which you are raising an interdependent team, which I was lucky and fortunate enough to observe this. It was in Reno, Far Western Conference, where Puerto Rico was playing us. So and I'm always very curious to just learn and observe, right? So I was very quiet. I was listening and just observing both teams. And it was so clear to me that Puerto Rico had this very deep sort of understanding of what it means to be interconnected, interdependent, and collectivistic. So they all celebrated every win of every player. I mean, I was like, I had my, therapist hat on, and I was super analyzing, being analytical. And I can tell you that without like maybe 10% of the times they missed it, but 90% of the times they were very much into that muy space that Dan Siegel describes, the space between me and we, the usness, which is really the sauce of success. That's what brings cohesiveness, cohesion to your team. And so they were all in. Everyone understood it. It was the impact of culture because, certain cultures have that collectivism and certain cultures are a little more individualistic, like the US, us, we're more all about ego and each teammate doing their best and shining and so forth. But the collectivist, the interdependent, that team spirit is what got them through. And these players were not that tall. They were all like, on the average height, but they beat us, and they just had such great energy about their whole communication style. And I was observing and wondering, like, what is it that we're not doing? And what I noticed we weren't doing as well as them was this whole like team, almost spiritual support, like them coming alongside each other so well and celebrating each other so well, not just like a couple of teammates who are a little more enthusiastic, but everyone showing up with that same energy and intent to lift the other person up because they're all one. They're all part of one team. And that was beautiful. It was such dichotomy that it just opened my eyes to, oh my gosh, so this interconnectedness, this mui is really magical. Like if you can tap into it, you will be more successful if what, other more individualistic teams are doing. So that was great learning for me.
Beautiful. And so I hear where my brain goes is where was the coach in all of this? Did you feel like this was a top down thing or this was a bottom up thing? Like these kids,
No,
right?
they were all on the same page. And I bet you it's because of the impact of culture, because that's who they are. Certain cultures, you just go in, Eastern cultures, Middle Eastern cultures, Asian cultures, you go in and it's all about the team. Hazel Rose Marcus, who studies this at Stanford University, she looks at self-construal and how culture impacts it. So when you are becoming a person, which teen years are peak of that, right? Identity crisis, identity development, and so forth. You're trying to answer the question, who am I? Like, who am I in relation to my society, to my community, to my, world, and so forth. And so the athletes who she studied, I believe it was Japan, they were all very aware of their success, and these were basketball players, their success in relation to team. So when they asked about success, all the statements, how they defined it, was connected to their team doing well. My team is like this. It was never about the I and the me and the ego. Where here, the more westernized cultures, the self develops in context of self-esteem, self-confidence, ego, autonomy, freedom, and all those variables. So it's just such interesting science and research. And Dr. Marcus, she talks about well-being and how, like, mental health partially is related to a well integrated brain, so when we're able to integrate better, when we're able to feel cohesion in our communities, in our societies, on our team, we're going to just have better mental health, so everyone benefits from it. So it's really important for when it comes to coaching or parenting or even education to really take that into consideration and build education, community, and self-awareness and social awareness based on some of these key, concepts. That it's very valuable to be aware of that interdependent, interconnected, the MUI space that exists between me and we.
Oh, is that what you're saying by muy? Is me?
Yes.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's Dan Siegel's research. The Boston group has looked at the usness. They talk about the usness, but or the oneness, or there are many different terms around this, but it's the same concept. It's there's a space that is not about you or me, but it's about us, between us, that once you become aware of that space and the value it holds and how to cultivate it, how to nurture it, how to create health, good health in that space, everyone benefits. And I think the interdependent societies and teams like Puerto Rico are really like aware of that, and it's part of their being, it's who they are. And I think maybe in some of the other cultures, westernized cultures, where we're not so, it doesn't come to us so naturally, we have to get there, because both are good. It's not this or that. It's like the brain, the more integration you have with the right left brain, or the more cohesion you have between the two, you bridge those gaps, you make those connections, the more whole brain and whole experiences you're going to have. So it's
I
good.
love that you went in that direction, because I actually, ironically, was a Japanese major in college and lived in Japan for a while, and lived with this host family. And my Japanese was good enough that that's all we spoke was Japanese around the house and dinner table and everything. And the grandparents lived in the house behind the family. Of course, they really take care of their elders. And the grandmother had made this beautiful doll, handmade this geisha doll. And then the mother had gone to Osaka and saw this other doll and bought this doll. And me, the dumb foreigner at 20 years old, admired the dolls, because I thought that's what we do is, oh, these are beautiful. And a week or two later, the mother comes to me and she's like, I need your parents' mailing address. And I was like, oh, she's going to write them a letter. Well, 2 weeks later, my mom gets these two packages in the mail. She packed up those dolls and
Mm-hmm.
mailed them to the United States because I admired them.
Yep.
I must want them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was mortified that, of course, as an American, you're like, oh, I like that. I like that, thinking you're just doing something that's being gracious. But
Yeah.
in fact, they have such a culture of we that the
Mm-hmm.
saying is the nail that stands up is the one that gets hammered down.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
us all being the same isn't boring or vanilla. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually that we-ness. It's that us
Right.
being on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to a park and seeing a 2-year-old boy digging in the sand and another boy coming over and admiring his truck. And at 2, the little boy going, handing the truck over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas we look at our kids and it's mine,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, I agree. One is not better than the other. They're
No.
very different.
Yep.
And what an opportunity to learn from a different culture as to how it's done a different way that may benefit team for sure.
Yep, yep. And that's the beauty of today's world. I think, we do talk about this anxious generation, lots of anxiety, disintegration, like over information overload, overstimulation, like, everything is like everywhere. There's such chaos, right? But there's also lots of opportunities because now the doors are open and we're learning and we have these opportunities to integrate. So observe like what you did. And the fact that you admired the dolls and the fact that she took that extra step to validate, affirm this admiration, and to let you know that I care about you and our relationship more than this doll, and I want you to have this as a piece of remembering this relationship and our experience together. Like, those are the moments in which you really appreciate how the world is really connected. You know, there's so much beauty in the world we have today, but it's just supporting our kids and making them aware. You know, like I talked about this with Cami and some of the other teammates, and I shared with some of my colleagues, and I said, in the world of sports, like, I'm noticing the impact of collectivism, this interconnectedness, the cultural factor is really great. And so how wonderful. But then they also need to benefit from our greatness in raising like super athletes. You know, we also have this world in which we are pouring into the confidence and the self-development and autonomy of some of these Western players, you know?
Yeah.
So it's all great. It's just like taking on greatness and integrating it, and then there's the individual differences, because I work with, you know, teenagers who come from different cultures but also come from different temperament backgrounds. So if you have a kid, I mean, you have 3 kids, I have 3 kids, every kid is very different, their temperament is different, so goodness of fit for one kid looks very different with the other kid. You know, you might have a kid who's really driven and just all about, you know, autonomy, independence, gritty, like, you know, and then you have other kids who have other tendencies, you know, they're not the same. And so I think respecting that goodness of fit and leaning into that space is also, as a parent, as a conscious parent, really, really important. And as a coach, I imagine, like, you're coaching these individuals with different temperaments. You might have one kid who's really intense, has a lot of intensity, is very active, like their level of activity is off the chart. And then another kid who's a little more mellow and not as intense. And, you know, they don't have the same OCD or perseverance, like those, you know, the brain, how the brain is different. So I think coaches who are doing great are coaches who are aware, you know, they have that social awareness of their players and are able to create a team that is well integrated, that has good leadership, and, you know, they thrive. You can see the athletes from season to season just thrive. And that's always a good sign, I think.
You're working at Nike for 15 years, and about 6 or 7 of them were in HR. So I was doing leadership and training and development. And what we always found were there are managers and then there are leaders. And managers ask you to flex to my style. This is what I like. So you need to come over here, and I like things in a certain way, and you need to make me happy. Leaders can see the differences, and I think it's the same with coaches. I think it's the same with parents. You know, it always confounds me when parents are like, well, this kid's my favorite. Well, why? Well, because they're the most like me. Okay, so that's easy. What about the kid that's not like you? And
Hmm.
how do you meet them where they are to help them, help you work on your weaknesses,
Right,
right?
right.
Because that's what they're doing, is pointing out what you don't do well or what you are blind to,
Yes, exactly.
right? And the best leaders have let go of the ego to say,
Hmm.
I have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. In fact, you might have all the answers. You might have some answers that I don't have access to, right?
Right, right. Yeah,
But
no, some of the best leadership I've witnessed in, you know, 20 plus years of my practice is, um, you know, leaders are good listeners. You know, their active listening is great. They have great self-awareness, social awareness. They manage relationships well. They set realistic goals. They inspire their teammates, or, you know, their team to be better players. I always talk to teens, and I say, think about, I know right now you're focused on yourself and how you can get better, but also focus on how can you make your teammate better, because that, I promise you, at the end of your journey is going to be really meaningful, and you're going to think about those memories and how you impacted someone else's life. It's really rewarding. Like, think about those opportunities. And it's great. Like, I think athletes today need to hear that, and they need to hear that from parents who are providing that type of leadership. I think parents who get a little in their head, and I understand right now one of the factors that is leading to a lot of anxiety for this generation is competition. Like, the competitiveness of whether it's sports or college or whatever, it is just off the chart. Like, it's very intense. And I think it's because with a higher number of applicants, the opportunities are scarce. And then kids are not opening up their scope to look outside the box. Like, they all are aiming for the top 20 or whatever, programs. And so it's just a numbers game. When they receive 10,000 application and they're supposed to pick, 1,000, it's just a numbers game. And so I think as a parent, it's really healthy to help these kids develop coping strategies and other type of thinking, like outside the box, and pairing them with consultants, advisors, coaches, and mentors who can help them pivot and find other paths to success. And honestly, like, oftentimes that just the success, knowing what success looks like, what is success to that senior, that junior, is a conversation that needs to get really deep. You need to dive deep with those conversations. And I don't think parents are spending enough time with those conversations. I think they're rushing it. They're all pushing in one direction with high competition, which leads to intense anxiety and depression. So we as parents, we need to do a better job leading our college-bound kids or student athletes. And that it starts with us. It starts with us, how we communicate with some of these advisors and deans and school consultants, and set the path for success, so that, they don't feel pressured. And I know, you've done an amazing job with your three, because I had the opportunity to talk to your daughter, who's a senior, and she's just amazing. I was so inspired by her. And more parents need to do what you're doing.
Oh, well, thank
Yeah.
you. I mean, and again, it ain't pretty all the time, right? Like, and that's not the point. Like, in
Mhm.
fact, that's the opportunity, is to
Mhm.
catch yourself doing it wrong and calling yourself out and say, look, I did not handle that well. I am sorry.
Mhm.
Can we get a do-over? Can we try that again? And to model that for your kids, that we're not, it's progress over perfection. We're not looking for you to do it perfectly. In fact, we'd rather you didn't,
Yeah.
because then you miss the opportunity. And yes, it's great when you win. I'm not saying that. Of course, we all
Mhm.
want to win,
Mhm.
whatever that means.
Mhm.
But I believe that where you go is not who you'll be. It's the opportunity.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
It's you deciding, what am I going to make of this one magical life, right? What am I going to make of today? And go after what I want. And if you're making progress, even if it's minute,
Mhm.
that's your journey. And again, we have so much. Let's talk a little bit about social media and what you're seeing, and the pressure that these kids feel to. Everybody's posting about what school they got into. Everybody's posting about their beautiful lives, and you must see that in your practice of kids that are feeling not enough.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, it's that social comparison that they're bombarded with due to social media, and that's partially. Sorry.
No
my
world here.
my puppy has a lot to say about that. He's very unhappy about it. So.
We're real here. We keep it real.
um. So. Okay. So you also are seeing this new movement. You know, there was this post your rejection letter, you know, that went viral, right? And I think this generation is trying to correct it to some extent because they see how unhealthy it is. But it's going to take a minute, and it's going to take lots of support from those who are able to tone it down for you know, this generation. So I think when you know, you mentioned the anxious generation, Jonathan Haidt's book, which it's really great. I recommend it to all parents. So he's a social psychologist. He studies the social impact, and so when he says that you know, this is a generation where we're you know, there sleep deprivation, which is related to social media, right? Attention fragmentation, which is the speed of information processing. So when you're scrolling and you are trying to you know, get to the next sort of screen, that's definitely interfering with your way of processing information. And so addiction, which is a huge factor for this generation, and we're not paying enough attention. I wish that we were, because TikTok is the fentanyl tech. It has been identified. In fact, they have pitched it in Congress and other places who are trying to fight, you know, to ban it. So it just has the same impact on the brain as fentanyl does. So there's a strong like addiction factor that I think parents need to just really repeat until the kids get it. And
So are
so
you in favor, like Jonathan is saying, ban phones till high
I
school?
am, I am, I
Keep
am.
them off of social media until 16.
I am, but I'm also aware that it has social currency. And so, in order to manage that social currency, it has to be banned for all. So, we can't just have a small group of parents who say no, and then the rest of the kids are using it, and these kids are feeling isolated and marginalized. So, I do believe that it has to be banned and stopped, like collectively as a community, as you know, society. We need to be on top of it. And listen, many countries have done this already. So, in fact, you know, I think we're a little behind when it comes to managing the information age and the digital age for our kids' brain development. Loneliness is
The struggle
huge.
we have, because I think schools are really trying that, right? Like, and my daughter's at, you know, a local school here where they did a retreat, 2 nights. They're away for 2 nights. The school said no phones, just
Hmm.
leave them at home. You don't need them.
Right.
Out of the 80 girls that came, 17 still brought them.
Hmm. Hmm.
And most of them said, well,
Yep.
my mom wanted me to bring it.
Right. Right. Because
So
they're trying to overprotect and
yeah, the
control the kids.
parents
Yeah.
are
The
more of the
parents.
issue. So it's even when the kid says, I get it, I'm not supposed to do it, but, and then you talk to the parent, this, well, yeah, I have to be in touch. Well, gee,
Hmm.
we went away to sleepaway camp for 2 months where there was no phone at the camp for two
Right.
months. And our parents didn't worry. And
Hmm.
now we can't be away for 48 hours or we're afraid, you know, like
Right.
that is driving these kids to have this anxious, right? Like I have to have that lifeline, and
Right.
the parents are also anxious, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So true. And so in cultivating like media literacy for these kids, you know, it is a type of relationship kids are developing with their phones, is that connection. We need to bring that awareness into how they're managing their technology. But social comparison and perfectionism are the two key sort of indications from his studies, right? And it's coming from a place of yes, there are a lot of posts that they look perfect, but you know, and I know they're not perfect. There are oftentimes filters and other ways that are influencing the image. So it's media literacy, like educating them on how to manage their technology. I'm
Do you want to take a break? We
Yeah,
can,
yeah. I need to like go
yeah,
and
yeah,
get him in a place so he's not interfering. Okay, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no
I'll be
worries.
right back. Hold on.
That's okay.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
Okay. No, I have a puppy too. It's like my biggest fear, right? It's not a
I
kid.
thought he was like in a good place. He was taking a nap, and sure enough, the squirrels got the
Oh,
best out of him.
oh.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe let's jump back in around social media and phone
Okay.
use and how do we help ourselves, parents, and how
Hmm.
do we help our kids when it is everywhere and it isn't mandated?
Hmm.
I've heard everything from I think it was an interview that he had done, but
Hmm.
somebody talking about. I don't think the answer is doing social media diets.
Hmm.
It's figuring out how to learn with to regulate it.
Right.
Right? Is that
It's
where
all
you?
it's all about regulation, media literacy. I've talked about this common sense media sort of way of looking at technology and helping our kids. I became, an advocate and joined Common Sense Media like many, many years ago. And at the time, it was a little bit of a luxury. It's like, okay, well, that's great, talking about how to manage and regulate. But now there's an urgency, like it's essential because it's directly impacting the brain. Like we're seeing the brain develop as, Dan Siegel and Jonathan Haidt are talking. And I'm so glad that he is really leading this, like pushing for it from a political and all like different angles, empowering parents to join the same mission. We really do need to all get together and make some of these tougher decisions that are going to benefit our children's development and health. And I think that we have neglected that. We have kind of under served. We've overprotected them as, Jonathan talks about overprotected, overprotective parenting, or we've overprotected our kids and then underprotected them with technology and social media and their phones and everything. And that's exactly right. Like I see how the disconnect has led to fragmentation, like lack of cohesion, lack of integration. I mean, think of it. It is like having, information bombarded and thrown at you at a very high speed without you being able to make sense from what you're seeing or hearing or sensing. So everything is over sensualized, presented to you in a very perfectionistic, like non-real way, but you think it's real. So you're being bombarded with all this perfectionism, all this information, but you can't make sense out of it. So your mind is left confused, is left overstimulated, is left anxious because now you're starting to feel, I'm not enough. Like I'm not as pretty, I'm not as good, I'm not, and I'm not enough seems to be the repetitive message that day in, day out you're taking in. And so it makes sense that at some point the mind is gonna just say stop, like enough, enough. And I think with teenagers, they don't have that mechanism built in because their brains are so young and they're going through this brainstorm phase where they're open to a lot of they're learning, like, who am I? Like I want to know, like, how to do this, how to create a career for myself, like how to pursue my sport. And then they're getting all this information about their interests, but not enough time to process, integrate, and consolidate. So therefore, and I've heard this from many of my teenagers and teenagers that I work with, that they're overwhelmed with over information, over like having too many options, um, having too many choices, having too much information, having so much perfectionism thrown at them without any barriers, without any guidance or person saying, this is not real, this is fake news, this is like, don't believe this. They're just overstimulated. And when you put that along with sleep deprivation, which is very, very common with this generation because they're on their screen, um, and some kids have that addiction, that OCD tendency more than others. So, but what we need to be aware, especially in the student athlete group, is that certain athletes generally have those tendencies, right? They have a little more of that obsessive sort of brain wiring, and so they're going to be more at risk for these types of addictions and so forth. So it's just like evaluating what are the risk factors, what are the protective factors, how do we decrease the risk factors, how do we enhance and cultivate those protective factors. And over, we know protective factors are being with your family, like you said, like being part of a community, faith, having values, having conversations, having downtime opportunities, having opportunities to cultivate your growth mindset, to develop those opportunities to connect, have those belly to belly, conversations, not have your phone distract you, and so forth. And so those are the protective factors. We just have to make sure that we're cultivating, nurturing, and developing them. And the risk factors, we just need to be aware of them, predisposition to addiction, access, sometimes with girls especially, relational aggression. Like we have to, especially coaches and educators, we just have to be aware of if there's relational aggression on the team, like nip it in the bud, like stop it and cultivate connection. Girls are a little more at risk for some of these factors, and I think we just have to be aware, and as parents we have to be aware. As parents, we need to be great role models and cultivate like connection, growth and connection with each other, and identifying what it's like to have common goals and success, and that everyone can win. You're on a team. Like if your team is winning, you're winning. And so playtime is not that important if you're seeing the big picture, right? So just having those regular conversations with them. But then, I think collectively the baseline for anxiety has gone up. This happened after the pandemic. I think we just see a much higher baseline. Especially teenagers have been more at risk because some of their parents have suffered. So they've dealt with a lot of little t and big T trauma. So the trauma has impacted their development a lot more than maybe the Gen Z and baby boomers and so forth. So it really is very complicated, but I think with the right mindset and being aware, raising awareness like what you're doing, I think having these real important conversations and solutions, like what are some solutions. And I think Jonathan Haidt has great solutions. Like he has like goals, and collectively, like as a parent body, as a community, as schools, we can reach these goals. They're achievable, and so we just have to take action. We have to take action.
And they're simple, but they're not easy, right? And so people want the easy answer, and sometimes the answer isn't easy, but it is simple. Removing the device. And what we know, our kids' brains are 10 times more addictive than our adult brains. So
Yeah.
when we think, oh, I'm giving my kid the phone, they know how to manage it, they're mature, good or bad, right? Having the opportunity, and what we're seeing is, you know better than me, the porn addictions that are happening for kids because they're being exposed to it. And his story, if you haven't read it, he talks about, when we were growing up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, parents allowed you to wander, and now we don't allow them to wander anywhere, but we're allowing them to wander on their phones into these very, very unsafe places. Yet we say one of the biggest hurdles is we take the phone away. Well, where can my kid go? Because he's not allowed to go anywhere by himself. So we're actually pinning them into the corner. But what I see without fail, and with my own kids included, is for about 24 hours, it's painful. And then they have an amazing experience face to face, belly to belly with somebody. And they realize, wow, I am so much happier without that but they can't see the forest for the trees because they're in the middle of it. And
Right.
that's an opportunity. I think one at my son's high school, they did a 4-day retreat, and they would send all the kids without phones. And I remember my youngest one coming home saying, "Gosh, the first day was awful." And then I broke through. And
Mm-hmm.
most beautiful. I got to know boys that I didn't have an opportunity to get to spend time with. And
Mm-hmm.
without the pressure or stress of not needing to be to a practice or do homework or be anywhere, just sit by the fire and tell me your life story.
Mm-hmm.
Like, walked away changed as people from those experiences.
Right, right, and what a beautiful way to integrate to bring that health into their development. I think you're exactly right that they need to have these opportunities, these moments where they are unplugged, but they're unplugged with their peers, and they connect and see the value of not being distracted, not reading those social cues wrong, because when they are together and they are on their phones, oftentimes, they're misreading social cues. One common one is, I hear this a lot, that, I feel like my friend is not listening to me, that they're always on their phones, they're not connecting. And it is true that they're not connecting, but it doesn't mean that they're not interested in what you have to say. So that and integration is not really, connecting, but rather, the perception or the interpretation is that my friend is not interested in me. They're disengaged. I'm not valuable. Like I'm not a good friend, or they're not a good friend, or whatever that interpretation. So all these interpretations or misconceptions are getting wired in the part of the brain that leads to negativity, negative thinking, and poor self-esteem. And as opposed to when you have those bonfire moments and you're talking and listen, people are seeing you, they're listening to you, they're making comments that are soothing to you, they're making you feel safe and secure. The brain is interpreting that and internalizing that and wiring in a way that they feel connected, they feel whole, they feel hopeful, they feel secure. And so it's great to, one, educate them about that. I think we don't talk to them enough about the consequences of phone addiction. I think if they became more aware of how the addiction is interfering with their relationships, especially those who are interested in relationships, uh, I think that we just have to make those connections for them as educators, as coaches, as parents, and repeat it. Because again, this is the time of brain development, that repetition leads to internalization of those concepts. We can't say it 10 times. We can't say it 100 times. We might have to say it 10,000 times. But at some point, it's going to click. And when it clicks, it's something valuable that they will then use for the rest of their development. So repetition, repetition, repetition.
I think an unlock for me as a parent too was, because parents, I get it. You're like, I've already said that 10 times. I'm not saying it again. But
Right.
when you don't look at it as they're not hearing me, they don't want to hear me,
Mm-hmm.
but the moment isn't ready for them yet. So
Yes.
you just need to keep saying it until the penny drops, and then
Mm-hmm.
and it could be after the first time, but it could be after the 100th time. But
Yep.
when you realize it's not about me, it's
Mm-hmm.
about when the student is ready, the teacher appears when they are ready to hear the message. And it may not be from me, it may be from the coach or the teacher or the friend. But I love it when my kids come home and say, "Oh, just heard the best advice." And it'll be something that, of course, I'm like, I know, I was doing that for years. And then, oh yeah, that's right, you did say that a lot. And you're like, really? Like,
Yeah.
you're just hearing that now? But at the end of the day, who cares where they heard it from?
Right.
Just that they heard it. And in fact, my oldest is now doing grad school nearby at Claremont, and he's playing basketball, and they had their banquet. And I don't even remember what the quote was, but he's up there speaking, and he dropped a line that I say, I feel like I say it every day. Now I can't remember what it is, but of course I was like, oh, he was listening. Like they are taking notes.
Yeah.
And when we can just go, this isn't about me, and it isn't about them not wanting to hear. It's
Hmm.
about the right time. And to your
Right.
point, I think the best parenting advice, have 91-minute conversations with your kid, not one. Well, I said it once.
Hmm.
They need to figure it out. And that's what I hear a lot from parents. Well, I've already told them that. Well, they need to get off their phone. They know that. I'm not
Right.
mentioning it again. Physically, let's go for a hike. Let's go get in the car. Let's
Right.
go for ice cream. Let's go play pickleball. Let's go do something together as a family
Hmm.
where we can be
Hmm.
face to face, where we can be, and those are the juiciest conversations. I love those moments where we're just together and there's no agenda. We're just
Hmm.
driving in the car. Or, I mean, that is honestly, I feel like one of the silver linings of Los Angeles is you're in the car a lot. And if they're not sitting there with their headphones on, some beautiful discussions can happen.
Right. This perfect. I mean, you're putting it in a nutshell, and that's exactly right. I think when we're building a community, especially with student athletes, it's the relationship with coaches, the relationship with their teachers, other parents, team parents, and so forth. I think when we bring like-mindedness, we're on the same mission. So the message is consistent. The message is consistent. There's cohesion. There's that collectivistic perspective of why. The why makes sense to all those parties. At some point, it's going to click and it's going to make sense and it's going to be purposeful and it's going to be meaningful. And I think there is no one way of saying it. It's just saying it multiple times from multiple people. In fact, I know from personal experience as well as the science and research behind it that, teen years are the years where separation, individuation, becoming who they are, and breaking apart from mom and dad. And same-sex parent has its own journey. So daughters with their moms, and usually sons with their fathers. I think it's healthy for us as parents to step back, step away, and say, "You got this. Go ahead and find your path," but making sure that they're surrounded by a community and mentorship and other people who are going to come alongside of them and are going to share similar messages and teach them and support them and help them grow and become who they are in their conscious space. So that's beautiful. I think to take a step back, to create that space and to trust them. I think that's what builds confidence, and to celebrate their fails. I always talk about, what was challenging today, not to celebrate only wins, because when they're winning, there's not much growth. It's when they're losing, when they're failing, when they've taken a step down, when they're making those regressional touch points, that you can get excited about their growth. What's the next step? What's the next touch point for them? And for them to have that growth mindset, I think is essential. It's a huge part of this piece, parenting, that I talk about in my book. And I talk about the 5 C's, why it's important to have integration with the 5 C's, to teach and model compassion. And compassion is a science. It's not just a word. It's not, just the spiritual aspect. There's a whole science behind compassion. And Dr. Neff, you're familiar with their work, self-compassion.org, is a great hub to go take a questionnaire, to study your own level of self-compassion and to cultivate it, because compassion is an inside out job. And if you don't have self-compassion, you can't really model or pass it on. In fact, it's the strongest predictor for success. marital success, teamwork success, certain professions, it's a strong predictor. So if you're hiring or if you're trying to look at like who's going to do better and you have two applicants, but one is really scoring high on self-compassion, I bet that person is going to do really well, is going to go far. So it's a good predictor. It's been shown in studies to predict success. And so work on compassion, self-compassion, work on communication style. And communication today looks very different than 10 years ago. So technology and how we communicate, texting, chatting, side chat, all that has complicated this communication factor. So we have to pivot and we have to learn, well, what does communication in today's modern world, healthy communication looks like? Then, there's collaboration, and collaboration has changed. God knows, now there's so many different elements to being successful as a collaborator, that I think we need to teach it better. I wish there was a course in high school on the psychology of cooperation, collaboration, how to be a good team player. Like that to me is essential to teens' development, and we don't teach it enough. So collaboration is third. Culture is my fourth C. And culture is really just being open-minded to look at the impact of any cultural impact. It can be like a subculture, even within LA, within a certain parts of LA, there's so many different cultures. So really the impact of culture on development, and then finally conservation. And we don't talk about conservation enough, but that's when, you want to raise conscious youth and people who are really interested in the earth, and really, that oneness, the mui, the usness. What does conservation look like when it comes to altruism, philanthropy, doing good for the whole, like seeing big picture and so forth. So those 5 C's are what I suggest parents implement and work with on a daily basis, just like your vitamin C's. If you take vitamin C every day, this is what you want to do. So keep that, and it's easy to remember because it's on your hand. Am I doing this? I remember when my kids were little, like I almost would, assign each kid to one of those C's and say, like, your job today is to just think about this. Like, how are you being a compassionate friend today? And at the end of the day, at dinner table, we would sit down and talk about it. And of course, they sometimes they're not into it and they think it's weird. they don't engage, but I kept repeating it, like, it's repetition, repetition. So you gotta keep with it. And now, finally, like, there are days that I hear, oh, like, it really felt good to be a friend or a good friend to my friend who's suffering, and you to suffer with her, to be there with her, not to just want to like fix it, but to actually sit with her and hold her and hold space for her and hold her hand and be there. So I can see, like, oh, so those seeds, they're finally coming to a place where they get the value of what it feels like when they do that for their friend or their teammate, and their teammate does that, for them. It's valuable. It's a lot more valuable than getting a gift or, something materialistic.
Beautiful. I love all 5 of those. I wrote them down myself because I think those are actually the heartbeat of everything that we, again, want our kids to experience, and what are we modeling, again, and how do we treat ourselves. I just heard Dr. Neff on a podcast, and the one thing that stuck out to me was she was talking about compassion for others and self-compassion are 2 entirely different things.
Mm-hmm.
And when we ask people, are you compassionate? You say, yeah, I'm really, I help my mom, or I help my neighbor, or I help my friend, but yet I'm not nice to myself.
Yep.
Right. So learning self-compassion, and we women, I think we're the worst, right? We're going to spend all of our time helping everybody else, yet our bucket gets completely drained. And then we wonder why we don't have anything to give anybody else. So coming up for women that are listening, if you're feeling, I do have women that like, how do you do it all? And like, no, I don't feel exuberant all the time. But
Mhm.
there are moments where I'm like, yeah, I'm tapping out for now so that I can fill my own bucket or get it
Mhm.
filled from somebody else.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because self-compassion, I think,
Mhm.
is that for me with these young athletes, right? Learning that is
Right.
about not getting the playing time. It's about not getting the scholarship. It's about, having the coach yell at me and it not going well, or not getting the grade. Like those are those lessons that, okay, how am I going to choose to respond to this in a
Mhm.
way that's nurturing and that helps me grow in a positive way?
Absolutely. And imagine if you have this internal sort of mechanism or this voice within that shows up for you when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling mad, when you're having those negative emotional experiences. So you have a voice that is kind, that is going to say, it's okay, like you're doing your best. Take a breath, go for a walk. You don't have to be perfect. You can just, take a time out. It's perfectly okay and healthy to slow things down. Take a minute. It's okay to cry. If you have a voice that is there constant, imagine what beautiful experiences you're going to have in those times of pain and suffering, as opposed to a voice who's self-critical, who's judgmental, who's telling you you're not good enough, why couldn't you, win, why couldn't you get that point, it's just a game changer, because internally you're then going to be able to feel, okay, well, I didn't get to my goal now, but I can hit the gym, practice harder, I'll get it next time. And that's a much quicker recovery than to sit in your agony and, pain and depression and anxiety. It just takes so much more to get out of that to level up than if you're able to maintain that positive growth mindset. And so raising awareness, raising that vibration that it's important. Just like you are a good friend to your friend. If your friend was crying, you would go and hug her and say, it's okay, we'll get it next time. Like, don't worry. We got to teach our kids to do that for yourself. Like there's a voice within that is going to show up for you. And, I know the science. I've followed Dr. Neff's work for, 2, 3 decades now. And I take the questionnaire regularly, like every quarter, because you do change on those aspects. I don't know if you've taken the test.
I'll
I,
take
I
it.
highly recommend it. It just brings a lot of self-awareness. And you think, like sometimes, because it's very subjective, like you think, you're there, and then you evaluate and self-reflect and you realize, oh no, like, I'm not really practicing that so much, and I need to work on it. And the way you work on it is through meditation, mindfulness, self-affirmation. I know a lot of athletes who practice, morning affirmations, like in the morning as they wake up, they're excited about growth and their day and positivity. So that type of growth mindset and cultivation of self-compassion, I think, goes a long way. It leads to, I've seen a lot of athletes and a lot of teenagers, a lot of college students who have just experienced tremendous growth just by shifting and making those adjustments and changes. And it's easy, like it's not very difficult. It just requires, like, in the moment, to catch yourself when you're being self-critical, to say, okay, it's okay, like you got this, take a minute, reset, and show up with that positive mindset. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to be realistic. It just means that you're going to reframe the situation so that you show up with growth and solution focused, mindset, as opposed to really dwelling on the failure and the negativity.
It's beautiful. That's an advertisement for what I'm doing right now, which is my mindset mastery course. So I've been teaching it for 3 weeks. I have another 3 weeks to go. And I set it up for athletes, thinking it would mostly be athletes that are joining, but it's mostly adults that are joining, because
Mhm.
we all need these things, right? We
Right.
all need to be talking nicer to ourselves. We all need to be recovering quicker. And it's a muscle. That's the
Mhm.
really good news. Is just because you weren't born that way doesn't mean like, oh, okay, I'm doomed to have. We are the only mammals that can project and reflect. Like,
Right.
it's a beautiful thing. Like, what a gift. I get to choose out of those 40, 50, 60,000 thoughts I have a day. I get to choose which ones I'm going to focus on and which ones I'm going to let fly on by.
Yeah.
And when we start using that muscle, it's not hard anymore. It becomes like, oh, this is, oh, okay, that didn't go the way I thought. All right, well, I'm going to try this. I'm going to pivot here. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go in a different door or a window or, like, and that's the fun when you start getting creative.
It's so fun. You start to surf those emotional, experiences, and it's so fun. You just become like a witness, an observer to the learning experience. And I think once you set your mind, like I always say, set your intent. When your intent is peace learning, which has always been sort of, my intent in everything I do. Honestly, I think that creates opportunities to be open, to learn, to take in, like you said, the self-reflection and all that, but also to experience like, what is my purpose? Like, why am I here in this moment? And it's not just you. I promise you, oftentimes it's the impact you have on your environment.
Mhm.
And so when we become mindful and aware of that, the purpose that we're here is to create a narrative that leads to, how are you able to serve or be useful to your group of people or whoever you're in surrounded by in any given time and place. And I think when you come from that angle, it feels like there's a lot of unity, opportunities. You're not alone. That loneliness that people are suffering from, you feel good. You feel, okay, I'm useful. Like there's a purpose for me in being here, whether it's, as a parent or a coach or a therapist or whoever your purpose is, you find it, you pursue it, you feed into it, but you also know you're not alone. Like there is a whole universe that is interconnected and linked to, I guess, grow. Like we're all growing, like at a cellular level, we're growing all the way, like it's an inside out growth process and there's meaning. And so just lean into that space, create a little more space and try to get out of emotional entanglements because we all have those buttons, when we get triggered. I tell you, my trigger at these tournaments is, is when I is when I see parents um, sometimes act mean towards like players. Like I just like, and I don't know how to handle it. Maybe you can help me because I've practiced like being quiet and indifferent.
Yeah.
I'm like, just, keep calm. They're doing their thing. And then I've practiced like actually, having a conversation with them, which didn't go well. I guess one out of two went well. So
Is it
I
to
haven't,
their own children or to other kids?
no, with the parents. So this is
Then,
all like parents.
but parents talking to parents or parents talking to their kids, or who are
No,
they?
no, parents making comments about the opposite team. So
Ah, okay.
not their kids, but like
Okay.
kind of getting in there and then either saying something negative or, like the side out comment, or whatever, their intention is to disrupt the game or win, they're being I guess, a parent.
Yeah.
So in those moments, I get triggered because I'm like, guys, like we're parents. We need to like behave better, and show up better for our kids. But I guess like I can understand it. Like some of these parents are really competing and doing whatever it takes to create an opportunity for their kids, and I get it. But at the same time, I'm thinking like big picture, like what are we teaching them? And I think with safe sport, and some of these measurements now, like, the purple card and so forth, like they're trying to regulate it more. But I've seen it a few times and I was triggered and I didn't know like what's the right approach here. Like, do you just sit back? Do you chill? Like, what would you do, coach?
Yeah, and it happens all the time for me as well. And I do what you do, which is sample one. I try to start in front of it by when somebody on the other team has a great block or a great hit. Wow, great hit! Oh, amazing dig! And
Hmm.
you get a little bit of like,
Right.
why are you complimenting them, right? But so
That's good. I like that.
I try to set the tone early
Right.
that we're for everybody.
Okay.
We're not against anybody, and we definitely don't want to be spewing hatred on the other side of the net. I think one of the best things out of COVID, though, honestly, for volleyball specifically, is that for club, at least still, you don't have to switch sides, because that was a huge problem where parents would, and they still do it, they'll stay and they won't move, and they like, because you're physically in each other's space, so that
Right.
becomes
Right.
a
Right.
real problem. But at least when we're on the same side, start by trying to infuse, like, this is
Mm-hmm.
my strategy, infuse as much positivity on the side as we can,
Mm-hmm.
and cheer for all the good plays. And when you do see a parent like that, again, I think it's as much as you can to be like, gosh, we're just here to, we are so here to grow, right? Like, it's okay. Like, it happens. We're not perfect either, right? Like, I don't know. I try to like inject a little humor into it just to see if that happens. If somebody's going down the rabbit hole and they're going to have a go, then yeah, usually it's like, letting a coach know or an official know or something. But hopefully we can manage it ourselves, because you're right. We're here for the kids. And when we start taking the focus off of them and making it about us, we've ruined it. And I see it
Mm-hmm.
happen all the time. I saw it happen in basketball a lot for my sons, where they would be chewing at the refs and be, literally the game would stop and the head of the club would, and I see it in volleyball too. The head of
Mm-hmm.
the thing comes over. We're standing there for 20 minutes. Why? Because
Yeah.
one parent thinks they didn't do the scoreboard right.
Mm-hmm.
And not one point is not going to matter at all in the scheme of things. But I think, back to our whole point of being here, which is understanding we are all interconnected, and
Mm-hmm.
how I just remember the phrase that my son used, which is one of my favorites, which is, how we do one thing is how we do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, how do we show up? And so parents who are going to that next tournament or game or whatever, think about yourself as if you could observe yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I
I
think about
love
that,
that. I love that.
if we can step outside of ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
think. And I have coaches all the time that say, one coach that was recruiting my son, and he said, well, you're a cool customer. And I said, excuse me? All the basketball coaches sat on the opposite side of the gym. He's like, oh, it's not that hard. We
Mm-hmm.
figure out which parent is over there. And then
Mm-hmm.
we're watching them. And that's USA Today just had a big article the same about how crazy the parents are, and they're coming with their demands. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I want floor seats, and I want my kid to play this position, and we're not starting behind. What?
Yeah.
Flip the script.
Right.
No, we are so grateful that we get
Mm-hmm.
to be here, that we get to be a part of this, whatever we can do to support you. I,
Yes.
I am not here to interject my opinion. I may not agree with everything you do. Fine. But that is not my role as a parent to, and parents who are like, yeah, but they're not doing this, volunteer.
Yes. Yes. Great tips. I love all of those. I especially love getting ahead of it with setting the tone and culture and being proactive. I love that tip and I will definitely use it next time. That's great. And it kind of puts things in perspective. I think it sets the tone. I think with anything, if you have more of a preventative approach, it really gives you that opportunity to pivot and get ahead of it before things kind of spiral in a negative way. Yeah, that's
We spend
great.
so much of our lives talking about what we're against. So we hate this and we hate
Mm-hmm.
that. What are we for? So let's
Mm-hmm.
focus on what we're for, model what we're for and reinforce what we're for. Doesn't, I mean, it's animal training 101, right?
Yep, yep,
He's
yep.
upset about the dog that peed on the carpet 20 minutes ago. It's out of his mind. He forgot about it. So
Mm-hmm.
you bringing it up. And again, same with child rearing. We're going to bring up something that they did 2 weeks ago and bring it up again and bring it, that it's not helpful.
Right.
Gosh, that didn't go the way we thought. Here's what I would like to see next time. What would you like to do about it? Oh, you're not going to play? Okay, let's go talk to the coach.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the tools to go do that on your own, or do you need my help? How can I support you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
our role. And not taking over and not pushing them out of the way and not saying this is about me. This is not about you.
Right.
This is their
Yes,
journey.
so important. Creating that healthy space for the student athlete to just grow and learn. And sometimes it's hard because they are going through pain and growing pain and suffering. But I think your ability to tolerate and apply that delayed gratification to observing them working through their challenges and their pain and suffering pays off long term. So it's that delayed gratification that leads to success. So I think as parents, we just have to remember, if you pause now and if you allow them to push through and learn and fail and make mistakes and get up and do better, they are going to benefit from that journey, that experience. So we need to get more thick skin.
Yes, right? And maybe a little deafer. Like, don't be focused on everything that's going on all the time. And I
Yeah,
like go take a lap. Like
yeah,
if it's triggering you so much,
right.
just remove yourself from it for a bit,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Go read a book, go take a lap around the gym. Like, but don't be so focused on it that you get caught up in it and then you're part of the problem as well.
Yeah,
My
yeah. You probably shift the whole growth and the attention from the athlete that is meant to experience to you,
Yeah.
and that's very selfish. No, I agree. I think that's great. That's a great advice for parents.
Dr. Nelly, this has been amazing. I love all of your guidance, and your energy is just radiating through the screen. And I know it will come through on the podcast too. Thank you so much for taking the time. Where can people find you, reach out to you, follow you, and your journey?
So on Amazon, they can find my book, Peace Parenting Essentials. My website, drnellymomtalk.com. I'm on Instagram. Dr. Nelly Psychologist is my handle on Instagram. And just, yeah, I think I'm always really honored to hear from parents. So if you have feedback, once you post, and once this podcast is broadcasted, I'd love to hear comments and hear from you. So it would be great to see it on your platforms as well.
Yeah, we'll share it, and we always love getting feedback. What's working for you? What's not? DM us, ask us questions. Let's keep the conversation going, because when we know better, we do better, and we're all in this together.
Awesome. We are in this together. We're stronger together. So let's do it.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Parents, like, share, follow, share this with somebody who could be using this, who's going through something. That's the best gift you can give people. I love whenever I'm hiking, I listen to something and I think of a client or I think of a friend and I push it along in hopes that, again, that's how we change our community, we change our relationships, and we support one another. So we've got this. Hey, Raising Athletes podcast fans, Kirsten here. And I have to share my new favorite hydration secret with you. Corvives Hydrate in pink lemonade. If you're looking for the ultimate hydration boost, this is it. Corvives Hydrate is an NSF certified for sport, trusted by 4 Major League Baseball teams and 3 military bases. With 6 grams of pure organic cane sugar, it ensures you absorb all the electrolytes you need. And get this, it has 3 times the electrolytes and 4 times less sugar than those leading brands. Plus, it's developed using the World Health Organization's standards for oral rehydration solutions, making it the equivalent of a bag of IV fluids. Best of all, there are no artificial dyes or sweeteners. It's so perfect for the entire family. You can drink it any time of day, before, during, or after workouts or sports. So say goodbye to sugary juices and hello to superior hydration with Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. Visit corvive.com. That's CORVIVE.com. And use promo code Kirsten. That's KIRSTEN for 30% off your order. Try it today and feel the difference.